I'm Assemblyman David Weprin from Queens, and I'm the prime sponsor of Assembly Bill 6597, which would finally revoke a tax exemption for Madison Square Garden that has existed since 1982. Even former mayor, the late mayor Ed Koch, stated when there was legislation urging Albany to act in the city council a few years ago that I co-sponsored, said that he never thought the tax exemption would last more than 10 years. There was obviously the legislation was not noticed that it was a permanent exemption. As I said, Mayor Koch thought it would only last 10 years. It now currently is about $17 million per year that the city of New York is losing because of that unique tax exemption that no other property, no other corporation in New York City has. It's actually, if you total up the years since 1982, we're talking about almost $350 million in taxes to the city of New York that have been foregone because of this tax exemption. It's really unprecedented. It's stuck into Section 429 of the New York State Real Property Tax Law, and it's really there's no possible justification at this point with needed revenue for the city of New York. We're dealing still with post-Hurricane Sandy relief and people in New York City hurting, that Madison Square Garden should have this particular tax exemption. We all know we've lost police, we've lost firefighters, there have been proposals to close firehouses, to close senior centers, and can you imagine what $17 million can do for the city's budget? And of course, if you cumulatively add it up, $350 million. Madison Square Garden is a $4.4 billion, very profitable corporation. When the tax exemption was originally granted in 1982, the Knicks and Rangers were threatening to leave New York City, and the purpose of the tax exemption was specifically to keep them here, to allow them to get back on their feet. Obviously, they become very profitable sports franchises, and again, as I said, the tax exemption should only have lasted 10 years. I'm joined by a number of colleagues of mine in the Assembly, as well as the City Council, and the Assembly members are supporting the legislation in Albany. Let me call upon my Assembly colleagues, and then we'll call upon the City Council colleagues. The bill is being sponsored in the Senate by State Senator James Sanders from Queens, and he is not here, but his counsel, Steve Bahar, is here, and I'll call on Steve after the electeds and after representative from CWA. My colleague from Manhattan, Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal.
Thank you. Thank you, Assembly Member Weprin, for sponsoring this important legislation that I know has garnered more and more co-sponsors in the Assembly as members learn more about the outrageous tax breaks that the Dolans and Madison Square Garden have gotten for about 30 years. You know, it's high time that we in Albany and those in the City Council look searchingly for all of the tax breaks that corporations have gotten over the years. Because the companies that have gotten those tax breaks don't need them anymore. We need the revenue that we have lost through granting these tax breaks for health care, for poor people, for all sorts of things that are needed by your average citizen. Meanwhile, the rich get richer, and they can get rich on their own without us giving them a helping hand. So I proudly stand with CWA, my colleagues in the council, in the legislature, and I say enough is enough. No more tax breaks. We're done with your threats. We don't believe your threats. We don't believe the teams will leave New York, because why should they? It's the most lucrative market there is, and we're confident they'll stay without our overly generous helping hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly Member Rosenthal. Assembly Member from Brooklyn, Walter Mosley.
Thank you, Assemblymember Weprin, Senator Sanders, to my colleagues in the Assembly and my colleagues in the City Council. Obviously, it's very clear the level of hypocrisy is standing before us. We have a multi-billion-dollar industry who is seeking chump change from city taxpayers, while at the same time this Cablevision / MSG conglomerate wishes not to sit at the bargaining table to allow working men and women to organize so that they can provide for their families and their future. Clearly, you take from taxpayers, but yet you don't want taxpayers to be able to provide for themselves. Clearly, this is something of a misnomer that must be disclaimed, must be highlighted, but at the same time must be exposed. Because ultimately, if we're going to grow as a city, we're going to grow as a city together. Rich is not going to go in one way, working class men and women and poor are going in another way. If we're going to continue to move forward as a city, we're going to continue to move forward together. In absence of that, we're doomed to fail. And if anyone's too big to fail, New York City is too big to fail. So I want to thank my colleagues. I look forward to continuing this effort in the upcoming legislative session, and I look forward to championing this fight for organized labor, for working class men and women throughout New York City. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Walter. We've been joined by another colleague from Brooklyn, who in addition to being an assembly member from Brooklyn is also chair of the Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus in Albany, Assemblyman Kareem Kamara.
Just want to thank the sponsor, Assemblyman David Weprin, sponsor Senator Sanders in the Senate. I'm proud to stand with my colleagues in city and state government, but most significantly, I'm proud to stand with the workers of CWA. We know they've been through a challenge the last few months and years. We continue to stand with you in the fight for the people of our state. Now, we keep hearing about tax breaks, tax benefits for corporations, but we've got to examine the word benefit, because it really is not many times benefiting the people, the ones that matter, and that's the people of our city and of our state. We should not be giving tax breaks that benefit only corporations, particularly as we've seen, fortunately, over the last few weeks in the mayoral campaign, the highlight of this issue of a tale of two cities, this issue of inequalities that we're faced with here in New York City. In order to do that, we've got to work to increase wages and to create jobs. And many of the corporations that are getting benefits for them say they're creating jobs. But many studies show they're not creating jobs. We have not new jobs being created, but a job shift. Because you have individuals who already have jobs who may take on a job with the corporation getting the benefit, but that's not creating a new job. We have to use the resources of our city and state, the taxpayers' dollars, to increase wages and to create jobs for people that need it the most, not tax breaks or benefits only for corporations or for the wealthy. So I'm proud to stand here with my colleagues to say, let's end these tax breaks and benefits, let's study them and come up with a plan where the taxpayers' dollars help the people, not the corporations.
We also have some members of the City Council where I proudly served for 8 years. Council member, possibly future Assembly member, Charles Barrett.
We say, tax the garden, support the people. 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 You know, I am so glad that I voted against the 10-year extension for Madison Square Garden. Some people were asking me, why did I vote against that? Madison Square Garden wanted a longer extension and the City Council cut it down to 10 years. I say they shouldn't get 10 days until they pay their taxes. Oh, yeah. They owe this city, they owe us, and every time they get a tax break, our backs get broken. You're breaking the back of daycare, you're breaking the back of senior citizens, you're breaking the back of youth centers, you're laying off workers, but you get tax breaks for Madison Square Garden. So I want to tell Mello and the players, I am the biggest Knick fan in the city. Later for the Nets, I'm the biggest Knick fan in the city, but I'm a bigger fan for the people of New York City, and we're sick of Madison Square Garden ripping us off, getting their welfare, while we have to suffer because we have budget crises and we need revenue to balance budgets. Tax the garden.
Thank you. And another council member from Brooklyn, Jemani Williams.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I want to thank Assemblyman Weprin and Senator Sanders for putting this forward. I mean, so let's call it what it is. Really, they've been receiving welfare for quite some time.
That's right.
Government subsidies, call it what you want. It's okay. Everybody needs help sometimes. We know that. The federal government now is cutting back on food stamps, and the garden has been receiving $16 million in tax subsidies for quite some time. Let me tell you what's going to happen. In a few months, we're going to try to pass a budget. When we try to pass a budget, they're going to say we don't have money for senior centers, we don't have money for youth programs. So the thing to figure out is, who has expendable income? Is it the people who need assistance and need these programs?
No.
Or is it these large corporations that get subsidies in the tune of $16 million a year? At the same time, they try to lock out CSA and can't even make good NIC trades. It's appalling. It's appalling. But what frustrates me is whenever we talk about cutting welfare and government subsidies, we always go to the people who don't have expendable income. MSG makes billions of dollars, is it billions? Billions of dollars, and they're getting $16 million a year. And whenever we go to save the programs from people who don't have expendable income, we go to them first. We go and cut people's food stamps. We go and cut senior centers. We go and cut youth programs. And then we say, well, crime is going up in these neighborhoods, but we're giving MSG $16 million of subsidy. They wouldn't even feel this if they lost it today. They wouldn't even feel the loss. So I'm here to say, stop trying to cut these guys out and lock them out. We're going to support them wherever you go, Mr. Dolan. And just give up this $60 million that you won't even feel, and it will make a difference in many of the programs that we need to save every time we pass a budget, and start making better NIC trades. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jemani. Also from Brooklyn, Council Member Steve Levis.
Tax the garden.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Weprin. I want to thank Senator Sanders. I want to thank my council colleagues, and I want to acknowledge the Assembly members and the state senators that are here. I want to thank CWA for being here. I want to thank Local 46 for being here.
Tax the garden.
Now, we have had a system in New York City over the last few years that is absolutely backwards. It's absolutely backwards. We have been giving huge tax breaks and tax subsidies, not only to MSG, and we shouldn't be giving them to MSG, but we're also giving them to the Yankees, to the Mets, and to the Nets, and whoever else wants to come here so that they can have access to the greatest marketplace in the entire country, if not the entire world. It is insane. It is absolutely backwards that we are giving them the tax break so that they can have access to New Yorkers' money. Now, where on earth would that make sense? Now, we are saying today, as we've said before, the council has voted to end this tax subsidy before. We are saying once again, we are joining with our partners in government in Albany to say this has to end. I'm very confident, I'm very hopeful that we are on the precipice of a new era in New York City. A new era of fairness, where we're not dealing with corporate welfare anymore. That we're actually going to take care of the people that need to be taken care of in New York City. That we're not going to do the bidding of the rich and well-connected. We got to end that era. And so I'm very hopeful that we're on a precipice now of a new era in New York City. We're not going to be giving out massive subsidies, massive handouts to people that don't need them. That we're going to make sure that we're taking care of who we need to take care of in New York City. The seniors, the children, those that want to make it, the middle class, and not James Dolan. I mean, that is absolutely absurd. And so I want to thank you all. I want to thank Assemblyman Weprin, Senator Sanders, and all the colleagues in government here, and especially all the workers, CWA. We have your back. We have your back every step of the way. And we're going to make sure that you get treated with fairness. And Local 46, thank you for being here. And let's keep fighting.
City Council Member from Manhattan, Margaret Shinn.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and really thank you to Assemblymember Weprin and Senator Sanders for taking the lead on this. The only way that we can fix this wrong is through the state legislature, so I hope you guys pass it as soon as possible. The last budget, we talk about fighting to get this money back, but we couldn't do it without state legislation. We had to worry about saving after-school programs in our district, and that $17 million would have saved a lot of them. So this has got to end, so that this year's coming budget in 2014, we don't have to worry about that anymore, all right? This has cost the city over $300 million. Imagine how many kids could have benefited from this amount of dollars. MSG do not need this tax benefit. They might have needed it 31 years ago, but not now. So, especially when they do not take care of their workers fairly. So we got to put an end to this. So let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Going back to Brooklyn, Councilmember Matthew Eugene.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let me first and foremost thank and congratulate also in command our colleague David Weprin and all the sponsors of the bill, and also all of you here for being here to do the right thing, not only for the hardworking people, but for New York City. We know that, you know, they don't need this break now. They don't need it. Probably they needed it before, but now we have to, the game should be fair, the rules should be fair. We have hardworking people in New York City, people who make the city the best city in the world, but we have to think about the welfare. So we have to think about providing them the opportunities for them to be able to get what they need to raise their children and also to get a better, you know, condition of work. It is not fair that we accept this break for the garden. They don't need it. We have to continue to work together and make sure that it is fair and we get the funding that we need. This break should be used to provide services to the people in need. This is an economical situation. The burden should not be carried only by the poor, working, hard-working people. They got to share the burden. They got to come on the table and give up the tax break. That's why we are here, and I commend all of you. Let's continue to do that. This is the right thing to do for New York City. This is the right thing to do for the hardworking people. They have to change the game. They have to change the formula. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And going back to Queens, Council Member Jimmy Van Brammer.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Weprin. I want to be here because I always stand with labor. I am proud to be the son of union parents, proud to stand with the members of CWA, and because they gave me their pin, Local 46. Jimmy! It's a beautiful pin. The fight and the struggle for workers' rights, for economic justice, social justice for everybody is every one of our concerns every single day, and I'm proud to stand with CWA and the men and women of Local 46 today, every single day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimmy. We also have two new council members who are going to start office in January from the 3rd District in Manhattan. Corey Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember Weprin. Thank you to my colleagues in government and to the folks at CWA and also Local 46. It's an honor to be here. As many of you know, Madison Square Garden actually sits in the 3rd Councilmanic District, and I look forward to working with my colleagues here, future colleagues in the council, and also the folks in Albany to make sure that working men and women get a fair shake from the Dolan family and from Madison Square Garden. The paradigm has shifted in New York City, and we have seen that in the election results 2 weeks ago today. The tale of two cities, the talk of affordability in New York City is real. It's the #1 thing that I think many of us heard about throughout our campaigns. And $300 million is a lot of money. 1982, I think, is when this started. I was born in 1982, and that is a long time ago. And so I'm honored to be here today. It's been said by my colleagues, but you know, the projected deficit for next year's budget is in the billions of dollars range. And as Margaret and Jumani and others have said, there are going to be conversations starting soon about where do we cut? Childcare, after school programs, money towards affordable housing. Where do we cut that money? Madison Square Garden doesn't need this money. The people who need this money are the working men and women in New York City, and we have to make sure that everyone is treated fairly. I stand proudly with CWA, who has gotten a bad shake and have been treated unfairly, consistently, for years by Madison Square Garden. Enough is enough. Let's make sure that workers are treated fairly, and let's make sure that our money is appropriated in the most important way, which are the core social services in New York City. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Corey. And another incoming council member from the 24th Councilmanic District in Queens, a former colleague of mine in the State Assembly, Rory Lansman.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, David. It's good to be with you all and to support this legislation. You know, when voters are as kind to me in November as they were in December, and I take office in January, we're going to be confronting some really difficult fiscal choices in the city of New York. And the one thing that I heard, having just gone through a contested election from the people who elected me, is they want the city to be run fairly. And they want the burden of righting the city's fiscal ship to be spread evenly. And it's impossible for me to justify to a homeowner in Queens or a small business how they have to pay their fair share of property taxes, and then some, to be honest. But a multi-billion-dollar corporation that doesn't treat its workers fairly, that that it has the opportunity to not pay its fair share of property taxes. Now, as we next year in the City Council try to figure out how to make the numbers work in a way that's fair, in a way that promotes opportunity and tries to bridge the equality gap that we have in the city, to be able to have to immediately cross out the property taxes that Madison Square Garden fairly owes to the city of New York is completely unjustifiable. And so I'm glad that David and who's the senator sponsor? That Jim Sanders, two guys from Queens. Very good. The two guys from Queens, and I know many other sponsors in the legislature are trying to finally make this happen, because now more than ever the city is going to need it and the public demands it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rory. And representing Senator James Sanders Jr. is Counsel Steve Bahar.
First of all, I'd like to say that Senator Sanders was very proud to co-sponsor this bill. This law is a prime example of corporate welfare. It shows that it's good to have friends in high places. A $4.4 billion company is getting a $17 million a year tax break. In the last 30 years has gotten a total of $350 million in tax breaks. They don't pay their tax, they don't pay their property taxes, yet a homeowner in Queens or a small business owner in Queens, they have to pay their property taxes. It's time that we step up and end this corporate welfare. Here's a company that's worth $4.4 billion that sells $12 hot dogs and will not negotiate fairly with the hardworking middle-class folks from my friends behind me from CWA. It's time that we step up and say we're going to stand up for the middle class, we're going to stand up for the average person in New York City against this corporate welfare. Think about it this way. $17 million is a lot of money. Every year the city is fighting to close schools and to close firehouses and senior centers in our districts that we represent. How many senior centers, how many fire departments, how many schools can we keep open every year with that $17 million? Once again, thank you very much for coming, and we really appreciate your support.
And now representing the hardworking men and women of CWA, it's Vice President Chris Shelton.
Good morning. We're here today actually to discuss a very simple math problem. What's happening here is, as everybody has said, Madison Square Garden is getting $16 million a year from the people of the city of New York. Well, it just so happens that James Dolan, the CEO, makes about $16 million a year. So the people of the city of New York are paying this guy who, by the way, has been negotiating in bad faith with my union for almost 2 years now, and has violated federal law after federal law, and is also in violation of his franchise with the city of New York, because he runs Cablevision besides Madison Square Garden. So what we're saying here is that instead of paying James Dolan $16 million a year, maybe we should keep more firehouses open. Maybe we should keep more senior centers open. Maybe we should take care of the people of New York who actually do pay the taxes, not the people who live in Nassau and don't need $16 million a year. So it's very simple. We can fix this very easily, even for Madison Square Garden. All they got to do is dump Dolan, save $16 million a year, and they won't need 16 mil from the people of the city of New York. So I'd like to say thank you to the city council people, the assembly people, Assemblyman Weprin, my brothers and sisters from Local 46, and all the CWA people that are here, because working people have to get paid, not CEOs, not corporations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. We'd be happy to answer any questions. Any questions from the press?